Hey guys and gals, it's your buddy Drew, with Living History's Mysteries and Three-Eyed Raven Productions. You know, so often when I make these videos for you guys, I get to enjoy doing the special editing, doing things on the green screen, putting the videos together, doing the research, finding things that, though it interests me, it may not always interest you as the viewer. You know something? I'm not really liking this much. Hold on. No, not at all what I had in mind. Much better. Today we're here at the Viking encampment in Finland. Why? For those of you that have been with the channel the longest, you know that I not only take pride in our American history, but in my own personal ancestry also. For those of you that have been a member of the group, a member of the family, for the longest, you know that I'm descended from the English, from the Scottish, and from the Irish. Just the other day, well, it's been a little bit, I guess. We done a story on the Picts and the Vikings even further back in the history of the channel. Both which had a big impact on Scotland, and the Vikings themselves had a big impact on 3/4 of Europe. So I figured today, just to shake things up a bit, we were going to take a look at the history of the Norse Vikings and some of the weapons and stuff that they used during their conquest of 3/4 of Europe. This is going to be cool. Check this out.
Hello and welcome to Cimbrerbushcraft-vikingheritage. Today I'm up in Yksengard, Viking village in the northern part of Denmark. I have been up here before making some videos about the village and also a little Viking market that was held here some months ago. Yeah. But today I'm up here making a video about weaponry and armory that the Viking could have used. And I brought some stuff with me. As you saw, I got a sword and other things. And of course my new shield here that I made in the previous video. So yeah. But today is about weapons and armory. Mostly weapon because the Vikings didn't use much armory, and I'll explain that in a little while. So I hope you enjoy this little video from the wonderful place up here in the northern part of Denmark. And yeah, first I'll say during the Viking Age there was a development in the methods they could produce iron on. So in the start, and you remember the Viking Age was about a period of 300 years, and in the start of the Viking Age the iron was very expensive, but during the Viking Age, when it went over to the Middle Age, the iron was more common. But it's important to remember this because much of the weapons that I show today is not for every man. If you are rich, you could buy some weapons with more iron in, but if you were a poor man, a farmer, you didn't have access to much iron, so the weapons you had was very small compared to the rich man. So, but I'll start with bow and arrow and talk a little bit about that. Yeah, and the longbow was used in the Viking Age by the Vikings, and of course with some arrows too. And I didn't think that the Vikings used bows and arrows when they attacked Lindisfarne and other places they raided, because it's not a weapon you can use like that. It's more when you are facing a large challenge, a big army, then you can use the bow and arrow first to shoot some arrows at the opponents and perhaps killing some, perhaps injuring some, and then you can attack with the other weapons you have. But when they made their raids on monasteries and cities and so on, my opinion is that they didn't use much bow and arrow there. But it's a nice weapon, and they certainly used it for hunting. When they were out in the forest, they could hunt animals with bow and arrows. And such a longbow should be a little bit taller than the man that used it. I'm 6'3", and this bow is a little bit short for me, but it's very doable, and I can hit a target precisely if it's good enough for that. So the Vikings definitely used bows and arrows, but mostly for hunting and when they faced a large army, so they could hurt them from a distance. And the next thing I would like to talk about is the spear. There were different kinds of spear. This one I bought in Germany, I think. They used larger heads than this, but this was also a way to attack the enemy. You can use it as throwing a spear, but again, if you're facing a large army, this will probably be a good way to kill some before you face them man to man. But mostly they used this spear when they were facing the enemies. When they made a shield wall, they could stand behind the shield wall with the spears and pick and kill the enemy through the spear wall. And that was very efficient, and that's why there are different kinds of length in the handles of the spear. This one is not particularly long, but it could do. And as you can see in this video from Yksengard, they use it very often when they practice their fighting here. So it was a good way to attack the enemy from a distance through the shield wall and perhaps kill or injure your enemy. So, and then to the most common weapon in the Viking Age. It was the axe. Yeah, and there were lots of different kind of axes. There was this one, kind of big one, and then I have my smaller one here in my belt. Of course, they could use the axe for chopping wood and so on, but in a combat, this was a very efficient weapon they could use. There's also an axe called a Dane axe. It was a special axe. The head was very thin and lightweight, and the handle was more than 2 meters. And then they could stand behind the shield wall again and attacking the enemies over the shield wall. I got this from Grimfrost, and of course I put links to all my gear in my video description or to my website, so you can find it if you want to get something similar like this. This is a great weapon and the most common used in the Viking Age. And now to my new thing, my new sword from Grimfrost. It's a Leuten Sverd, and it's a replica from a find in Norway, Leuten in Norway. I must say, many of the gears, the weapons and jewelry and so on that are sold in Grimfrost are actually made from replicas of original findings. It's made out of bronze and of course steel here, high carbon steel, and it's very heavy. I think it's about 1.5 kilo, and yeah, and the scabbard, the sheet here, it fits nicely. I really appreciate this weapon. I'm not going to begin fighting. There's some fighting groups, Vikings here in Denmark, and I could probably join them, but I think I'm too old for that, so I'll just have it with me on some of my trips and hang it on my wall. But I think it's a cool weapon, and yeah, it was only the rich people that could afford a sword, because there's a lot of iron in it. You can understand that, and you have to be a jarl or king, a very important person, if you had money enough, so that the blacksmith could make such a weapon for you. But I like it, and yeah, I think it's cool. Leuten Sverd. But this weapon was good in combat. Of course, you can stand behind the shield and swing your sword and hit the enemy and injure him very severe. So I think the Vikings was all dreaming of having a sword at that time, and of course the later in the period, the more people had access to iron and could afford a sword. But in the start of the Viking Age, not many people could afford buying a sword. But an alternative to a sword, you can use your seax, not my Cimbrer seax. It would be too small for that, but a larger one, like this one, also from Grimfrost. This is a little sword you can use in hand-to-hand combat. So there's not so much iron in this, so more people could afford buying seax, and they also was longer than this. You can have it on your side like a little sword, and yeah, so this could be an alternative to a sword. Now a little bit about the armory. Of course, shield was armory they could use, and they could make them themselves. It was not particularly difficult, and lots of Vikings had a shield, and they could hang it along the side of the longship, the Viking longship, and have them ready when they are attacking cities and so on inland. So this was a good armor and a cheap one. The only thing is this one is called a bush, I think, and it's made out of iron, and you had to, of course, have access to iron. Then the next thing, the helmets. Yeah, there's a lot of iron in this, and because of that, not many Vikings used helmets. And of course, it's a cliche that the Vikings had horns on the helms, so there's no evidence of that. But it's very heavy, and it can protect you from an axe blow to the head. And probably the rich people, the jarls and kings, would have worn such a helmet. But yeah, the Vikings did use helmets, and it's very heavy to have on. And yeah, I think it was only for protection, not for the good looks, that they use helmets here. And then there was chain mail. I think it's called clothing made out of small rings, small chains that they could wear, and it was very efficient. If the axe hit the chainmail, they wouldn't go through it, and even arrows and so on could protect them from that. But again, it's a lot of iron, and the common man didn't have access to such much iron, so it was only again for the rich people that could use that. Of course, later in the Viking Age and in the beginning of the Middle Age here in northern part of Europe, more and more people had access to iron, could afford buying more armor, so they were more protected. And of course, they could have gloves on made of thick leather, and also some protection on the shoulders with some padding and thick leather that would help them to protect the body from spears and arrows and perhaps a small axe. But most common Vikings didn't use the armor, at least not in the start of the Viking Age. And the story about the berserkers, there's lots of different stories about them, but they say that they were dressed out like a wolf or a bear, or even naked. They just went berserk without thinking about their own security and safety. And yeah, there's a lot of stories about these berserkers, and it's very interesting too. Yeah, that was the things I have wanted to tell you about the Viking weapons and armory. And now I think it's time for a cup of coffee. Yeah.
Welcome back. You know, it's like I said in the beginning, the Norse warriors that came from the Scandinavian area, Norway, Germanic regions of Northern Europe were one of the most warsome fighting groups that the world ever seen. And I personally take a lot of pride in the fact that I'm descended from those people from over a millennia ago. Kind of explains my my moods once in a while. Believe me, everybody can definitely, yeah. But I want to thank you guys for taking this look into a little bit of Norse history, the weapons and accoutrements that they used to survive. I want to thank Cimbrer Bushcraft for his help. Recently found friend, and I like his stuff. You ought to check out some of his videos. He just recently built a dugout bushcraft shelter that's top of the line. But that's all I got for you guys today. As always, take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. God bless you. God love you, I do. See you guys in history.